All right. Well, um, Grace and I have already been in coaching this morning, so I know where her business is at right now. I won't make her do it all over again. But what I will do is go ahead and introduce your instructor. And when I was reading his bio, I was like, my God, we couldn't have a better person teaching this class. So I don't know Timothy personally, but he was the #1 buyer's agent for Keller Williams Capital City in 2020. So there you guys go. And he got his principal broker's license last year and launched his own team and opened up a mega agent office. So I think you are in good hands when it comes to learning about how to win the buyer. In fact, I'm not sure I shouldn't stay on the call, but so you're getting to learn from one of the best, it sounds like, and I will hand you over to his capable hands. So
right.
Have fun. And I'm going to hang out and let people in as they trickle in, and then I'll jump off.
Awesome. Well, good to meet all of you. I want to make this fun and interactive today. So please feel free to raise your hand, holler at me, whatever you need to do if you have questions throughout today. So give me just a second here. Just got to make sure I've got my outline here. Where did that go? There it is. Okay. So, and your guys's, you have your, I'm assuming you have your Win the Buyer handout or student manual. Is that correct? You guys have something to follow on? You just taking notes?
No. Was there a link to something or?
I don't know. They just asked me to show up and teach the class. She sent me the manual, so I was assuming you guys had a manual. If you don't, that's okay. I'll give you what you need to know. Okay. So
I got one participant guide from the office, so I think this must be it.
Okay. Yeah, it should just say win the buyer, session 14.
The agents that are in the PC program will have it. The other agents may not. I'm going to jump on and grab it, and I'll drop it in for you guys so everyone has it.
Okay, great. Awesome. Perfect. Okay, so basically today's agenda, first we're going to start talking about you, the real estate agent, and what you need to do in order to be an expert in today's market so you can, be that person to advise buyers on buying a house. We're going to move from there to talk about lead generation to find buyers. And then obviously from lead generation, you're going to move to follow-up and setting appointments, right? And then to the transaction itself. So that's kind of where we're headed. We're just going to kind of walk through that process. So okay. Well, I'm not sure where the real estate expert piece went because it seemed like I don't see anything there. So let me just talk about it briefly, and we'll move on to lead generation. So how many of you feel like you have imposter syndrome sometimes? Yeah. Because you get out there, you feel like you're brand new, and you don't want to say, I've had my license less than a year, because that doesn't inspire confidence, right? A lot of what goes on in your in that first year or two in real estate is a lot of mindset stuff, and you're going to have to find a way to get past some of those negative things that your mind might be telling you, and begin to see yourself as the real estate expert. So, one of the best ways to do that is to just really dig in and read and study and read economics and look at what's going on in the market and make sure that you're as knowledgeable as possible about what's going on in the housing market, because anywhere you show up, people are going to ask you, how's the market, right? And to just be able to give them a quick statistic, something that you recently read. You don't have to know a ton, but if you just at least know something, then you come across as the expert. So it's not that you're trying to fake it, but you have to start somewhere, and you don't need to sell yourself short by, well, I don't really know, or I haven't been in the market for very long. I mean, we say all kinds of like self-deprecating statements sometimes when we feel embarrassed or, kind of awkward or whatever. Don't save those. Like, don't say anything. It's not that you're, trying to pretend to be somebody that you're not. You just, obviously, to get into business and start making money and be the real estate expert, you're going to have to act like the expert, even if you don't feel like the expert. And what I found after 6 years in the business is I still don't feel like the expert, right? Any and every transaction, I'm getting into something, some aspect of real estate that maybe I haven't done before, and it's brand new. And so I got to read up on it real quick and learn what I can, and in a sense, pretend to be the expert, even though I might not be. So anyway, so I don't know if you guys are signed up. Like, I get market overviews every Monday. So you'll be able to see what's going on with the inventory. Are you guys familiar with those? Have you looked at those at all? Some? Okay, what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to just take a second and share my screen. And let's drag this over here. And I'm going to get my so this should be for, oh, that was from a long time ago. Where are my ones from this week? I just put let's go back to the inbox. Maybe oh, here they are. Here's the TMO reports. Okay, TMO reports. Where's everybody from? With only like 3 or 4 of you, you guys, yeah, unless you have a noisy background, you can come off mute. That's fine. Where are people from?
I'm in the Fox Hollow part of Eugene.
You're in Eugene. Okay, so let's pull up Eugene. Okay, so on a market overview, you're going to see your price brackets down the left side and your categories across the top. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Can I make this bigger? How do I make this bigger? Well, no. Okay. Well,
is like a magnifying on the bottom, like when you hover over there on the bottom middle? Does that help? Or does that go away? Kind of like at the bottom of the sheet, there's like a little black bar that I can see, but it might just be me.
I see a remote control apps. More. Yeah, I don't.
Or can I? I know I can.
More.
Well,
okay, we're just going to deal with it. Anyway, I hope you can see, but you should definitely be getting these from your market center if you're not, okay? So they'll come out every Monday. And first category is going to be number of active listings, number of pending listings, and then the ratio and the months of inventory. So for instance, if I was looking at Eugene, trying to see what in the world's going on, I can see that there's very little inventory up to 375. There's a little bit between 325 and 375, but not much. And then it really starts at 375. Really, wow, all the way up to basically, well, yeah, even over $1 million. There's quite a bit of inventory. So the inventory really starts at 375. So, if I know that there's not much out there under 375. If I've got buyers under 375, I need to be able to show them and say, here's the inventory. There's 6 new listings, 3 of them went under contract. There's 2 months worth of inventory, and then be able to show, like, okay, because part of your job is teaching, is helping, this first time home buyer or whoever it is understand what this all means. So if I had somebody looking in Eugene, I would pull this up and show it to them at the buyer's consultation and say, okay, so if you're hoping to purchase at around 500,000, then just under that, there's basically 4 months of inventory, or just above that, there's 2.5 months of inventory, and those homes are selling at 101.4% of purchase price, or 100.9. So right around 101. So what you're trying to do is set expectations with your clients. That's really kind of your number one job as a buyer's agent, is to manage expectations. And what you'll find is that, 99 times out of 100, buyers come in having what we call champagne tastes on a beer budget, right? So they want a house, but they might not have the money to pay for that house. So your job is to kind of be able to diagnose, be like a doctor, and diagnose the difference between what to be reality and where the buyer's at. And you got to kind of manage that gap and try and bring them back to reality. So that's kind of the skill that you have to develop in being able to help people without being harsh or critical or argumentative. But you have to have some psychological skills and some sales skills that help bring them around to where they need to be. So questions around reading the market overview? As part of it is you're going to see what they're actually selling for and the percentage, so that you can prepare your buyer. You're saying, hey, if I know that there's low inventory and the houses are going for 101% of purchase price, then putting in a low ball offer is not going to get the job done. So you just come back to your buyer and say, well, we can write that low ball offer. We can do that. And why would we write an offer that's not going to get you a house? So, and you listen and you can probe and ask questions or whatever, and in the end, you're going to do whatever your client asks you to do. But you're also there to, again, set expectations and say, here's what homes are selling for. They're selling for 101%. So likely that's probably what you're going to need to do. And that helps your buyer then move towards reality, instead of wasting everybody's time on a low ball offer. And the other thing is you can just say, okay, yeah, you can go in 10,000 under. That's fine. And in the meantime, when we're haggling back and forth, then another offer comes in, and now we're competing, and it drives up the price, and you end up paying more for the house than you would have if you just put in a full price offer and got it under contract. Right? So you're able to show yourself the expert by having this either printed out or be able to bring it up on the screen and be able to interpret it for them, you know, looking at the information and saying, okay, yeah, homes are generally staying on the market for, you know, X number of days in this price bracket. So they've got that information over there on the side. Down at the bottom, they've got the averages all the way across. So basically in Eugene, all the way across the board, they've got 2.8 months worth of inventory. So anybody want to tell me, it's with 2.8 months of inventory, is that a buyer's market or a seller's market? Anybody? All right, so it's a seller's market. So general rule of thumb, if you want to jot this down, 0 up to 3 months is a seller's market. The sellers are in charge. They are in the driver's seat. Buyers do not get to negotiate a whole lot. Then like 3 months up to, some people will say 5 or 6 months is what we call a balanced market, where there's give and take. Both sides are going to have some negotiating power, and we're going to meet somewhere in the middle. Over 5 or 6 months, that's when you're truly in a buyer's market, where buyers are in the driver's seat and sellers are having to fix everything up on their house and still be willing to take, you know, 20 or 30 grand under asking price in order to get their house sold. We haven't seen that in a long time, nor will we probably see that anytime soon. We've been pretty much in a buyer's market for the last however many years. This last winter, in some markets, it bumped up to being kind of a more of a balanced market between last June and say this March. But then buyers came back out and gobbled up a lot of the inventory, and we're back into a seller's market. So that is that. I wanted to show you guys that. So let me get out of there. Let's just go back to I'll just show this to you guys, and we'll walk through it so then we can just be on the same page. Okay, 7 steps to the buyer's service cycle. Obviously at the very beginning, you're lead prospecting and you get a lead. You're gonna set the appointment and then prepare for the buyer consultation. You're gonna hold that buyer consultation and get out there to show homes and find them a home. We're going to offer and negotiate the contract, and then you're going to help service that buyer to get them through the inspection period and all of that to close. And then afterwards, there's obviously follow-up, asking for reviews and referrals. So that's kind of the cycle, if you will, or if you want to think of it as a funnel. You're trying to work your leads down through a funnel. All right, so here's some keys to converting your A buyers. So when we say A buyers, a lot of times you'll hear A, B, and C buyers. A buyers are your buyers that are ready, able, and willing. Okay, those are the three key characteristics. You want to write it down: ready, able, and willing. Ready as in they're pre-approved. They've, managed their life in such a way that they're making time to actually go out and see homes instead of always being busy or not responding to your phone calls, right? Able kind of also means they're pre-approved. It means that they have both the borrowing power and the cash necessary to be able to buy a house, right? They're able. And then W, the willing, they're all important, but you could have a buyer that's able and ready. You might even be showing them a bunch of homes, but in their mind, they're not willing to buy a house. And so you're spinning your wheels because they keep saying no to all the houses that you show them. So are they really ready? Are they really an A buyer if they're not ready to get out there and buy? And how much time do you want to spend on a buyer who's not serious about buying, right? So your A buyer are those three things: they're ready, able, and willing. All right, so number one, respond right away to lead inquiries. So whether you're getting leads through some sort of internet source, however your leads are coming in, obviously it's always speed to lead. You want to respond to those very quickly. There's all kinds of crazy stats about people calling real estate agents and them either not returning their call at all or not returning their call for like a week or two. Probably not the greatest business practice, right? They just lost probably a $10,000 paycheck by not responding. It's not that hard to pick up the phone. So if you want to beat other realtors out there, all you got to do is show up and pick up the phone. Pick up the phone, make the calls, call the people back in a timely fashion, and you will get business. Here, number two is kind of an important one that I see a lot of rookie agents they're either afraid to ask for the information or they forget to ask for the information. I met this person door knocking. I talked to this person. Well, did you get their phone number and email? Well, no. Okay, well, what good is that if we can't put them in command? So you got to make sure it's all about capturing the data. Yeah, you want to build a relationship and you're talking to them and getting to know them and all that kind of stuff. But at some point, you got to get their information. And it's better to do it when you're right there instead of having to try and call them back later or get a hold of them later. So make sure you get all the data points. At least get the phone number and email. You can always look up a mailing address. But we want to get all those data points and get them into command and then create the opportunity. Are you guys, not that I'm here to teach command, but you guys know how to make an opportunity within command? Yeah, sort of, kind of. Okay, it's not hard. It's pretty easy. All right, determine their motivation to buy so you can speak to it. So a couple of different things you can do. One, you're going to ask questions about their life. So what's got you thinking? Well, okay, so let me back up. Never ask a why question. So why are you moving? Or why do you want to buy a house? Anytime you ask a why question, think about when you receive a why question, you immediately get defensive. You're like, you know, it just puts people on the defensive. So don't ask the question with a why. Ask it with a what or a how. That's much more neutral and just comes across as being inquisitive and curious and interested in the buyer. So, you know, if I was talking to Jess, I would say, so Jess, what's got you thinking about buying a house? You know, and so then, you know, the person's going to be able to say, well, you know, I just got married and, you know, we're looking at buying a house, or I moved to town. I've got a job transfer and I need to buy a house, or, you know, whatever their life situation is, they're going to start talking about what's going on in their life that that's got them thinking about buying a house. So here's a key. Here's something for you guys to think about as you're looking for buyers. When people are buying and selling real estate, it's always around something big going on in their life. If you think about it, they're either getting married, having a baby, they got a new job, they just sent their last kid off to college, they're getting a divorce, or somebody just passed away. So all those are huge life events, right? That could be positive or negative, but either way, they're going to be filled with a lot of emotion, a lot of stress, a lot of things going on in their life. So you coming alongside and being able to recognize what the motivation is a huge connector. It's a huge connection piece, because you're not going to be able to argue with them into buying a house, or reason with them, or use any kind of logic that's going to convince them to buy a particular house. You're just not. But you know, you get them under contract and you're going through the transaction and they start to get cold feet. Don't use logic. Come back to their motivation. Now, you told me that this is why, you know, this is what was important to you about buying a house, was it was going to accomplish this for your family. And we're like 10 days away from that happening for you. You know, are you really sure that you want to pull the plug? You know, and then paint the opposite picture. We can pull the plug on this house, and just know there isn't hardly any inventory in your price range, you know, or whatever it is. So you're there as an advisor, and you're painting a picture and helping them understand and speak to their motivation. Okay, so just remember that your logic makes you think, emotions make you act. So you want to speak to their emotions, which is going to be tied to their motivation. All right, and then number 4, set an appointment, time and date for as soon as possible. So again, a lot of times as newer agents, you're not as confident, maybe, and you know, you maybe kind of hesitate or whatnot. Don't do that. Some other agent will pick them up in the meantime, and you'll lose business. So what you need to do is practice. I mean, it sounds silly, but literally practice closing for an appointment, even if they tell you no. Like, even if they say, buzz off, I never want to see you again, you're going to need to practice. Great. Sounds like we need to find the time to get together and talk about real estate. Would you like to get together, you know, this Friday at 4 or next Monday at 3? because it just needs to be second. It's like, doesn't really matter what they say. Doesn't really matter what they say. Whatever they say, you need to be prepared to say, great. Sounds like we need to find a time to get together and talk about your goal of buying a home. And then you always give them two options out of your calendar. Okay. So your calendar could be completely blank, but don't say, oh yeah, I've got, my calendar's totally open this next week. Don't say that. Because then it kind of looks like, oh, you don't have any clients and you might not know what you're doing. So I might not want to have an appointment with you. So just, whatever times you want to pick, but just give them two time slots. More times than not, they're going to choose one of those time slots. If they say neither of those time slots work, then you can look back at your calendar again and give them another 1 or 2 time slots, and until you find something that works for you. But really practice making sure you get their contact information and you set the appointment. Now, in my closing script that I just used, I didn't use the term appointment. I will either talk in relational terms about getting together, which seems very innocuous and informal, right? Doesn't sound super serious, like, oh my goodness, we're gonna have an appointment. Or depending on the person and the relationship, I will talk about their initial consultation. So a consultation has that connotation of they're being advised. It's like they're gathering information. They're on the receiving end, and they don't feel like an appointment feels like, oh my goodness, I have to commit to something. The consultation feels like, well, I'm just exploring information from an expert who's going to give me their advice. So if I feel like it's important to come across as professional or what have you, then I'll decide, well, let's, I want to get you into my calendar, so let's schedule your initial consultation for blank, or does this work for you? So I know it's kind of semantics, but words do mean things. So I don't really use the word appointment, just so you know. Okay, so you got your A buyers, B buyers, C buyers. So your A buyers are ready, able, and willing. Your B buyers are kind of like, okay, they're pre-approved, but you've checked their motivation and they're not super motivated. If the right house pops up, then I'll do something, those kind of folks. Your C buyers they're really a long shot. They've said that they want to buy a house, but they really haven't shown the motivation or been willing to really take the steps necessary to be a ready, able, and willing buyer. Maybe you have them on a search and you check in with them maybe every 3 months, but they have a lot of excuses. Their life's always busy and they just can't seem to get around to pulling the trigger. Those are your C buyers. Now, one nice little tool that you can use to distinguish your A, B, and C buyers is to ask them this question. So you might want to jot this one down. So, I'll just use you as an example, Martine. So Martine, you said you wanted to buy a house on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I need to buy a house today, 1 being, I need to buy a house someday. Where are you on that scale? So people will say, well, I'd say I'm a 7. Okay. what would have to happen to move you from a 7 to a 10? Right? And what's nice about that is that it's all hypothetical, right? They don't feel any pressure, but yet they're going to reveal to you what would move them to a 10. So yeah, I'm a 7. So you can gauge, okay, they're putting themselves as a 7. That means they're fairly serious. They really want to buy a house, but it also means they're afraid to be pressured into buying a house right away because they don't want to buy a house that they don't really like. And so really you've got somebody that really wants to buy a house. You're just going to have to help them overcome their fears and get out there and buy a house. So, you know, what would move you from a 7 to a 10? Well, you know, it's springtime and we're just starting to look, but you know, after our son graduates high school in June, we'll really get serious then. Okay, so there's a potentially legitimate time factor in they're interested now, but they're really going to be serious about moving on something after their son graduates. You know, or it might be, you know, a surgery, like they're starting to look for homes, but really don't want to buy something until after they've recovered from some surgery or whatever it is. Then you know, okay, I've got this potential buyer. I just need to stay in contact with them, probably on a monthly basis at that point, and up till whenever it is that they said that they're going to be a 10, right? And then just know that people tend to jump the gun and get serious and want to buy a house before they actually say they want to buy a house. Always happens. Okay, 7, close to appointment tactics. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. To tell you the truth, I've got number 6 is the one I use that works for me. And you could probably look up these other approaches on YouTube or, you know, some real estate website is probably going to be able to show you some of these if you want to try some different closing techniques. For me, I'm an extrovert, I'm friendly, I'm outgoing, and I just assume that you want to do business with me. So I'm going to keep moving forward and say things in a way, you know, so when are we getting together? So I didn't ask you if you wanted to get together with me. I'm already setting the appointment. Hey, so when do you want to get together? This day or that day? I'm assuming that you're already going to say yes. So I just move forward. That's what works for me. Tie downs are questions that, you know, elicit a yes or a no. So you could say, you know, you could be talking about closing for the appointment and say, sounds like we should get together, doesn't it? You know, the doesn't it, they would say, well, yeah, I suppose so, right? They're going to answer yes. So a tie down is where you make a statement and then you close with isn't that right? Or, you know, something like that, that either is meant for them to say yes or no to. And so anyway, those are called tie downs because you're getting them to commit to something. You're getting them to make a statement, yes or no, that kind of pins them down a little bit. So those are effective way to close as well. All right. Buyer objections to the appointment. All right, so you have a lead, you're talking to this lead, maybe you're on the phone. a lot of times they're going to have objections to getting together with you, and they're usually pretty flimsy. You know, it's usually about being busy or what have you. So we're walking through what they're calling a 5-step system, asking questions. So showing curiosity in the person, we already kind of talked about that the person who talks the most dominates the conversation, but the person who asks the most questions controls the conversation. So make sure you're asking questions of them and getting them talking, and not you doing all the talking, either, you know, about the market or about yourself or your team or, you know, whatever it is. A lot of times real estate agents get into, maybe they're afraid of awkward silence, and so they just get into talking a whole bunch, and dominating the conversation, because most of us are good talkers. And that doesn't, you know, we walk away thinking, oh yeah, we're really connected with this person. Well, maybe they didn't even get to talk very much because we were dominating the conversation. So make sure you're asking questions and really setting your own agenda aside, you know, setting your own thoughts aside, feelings aside, opinions aside, and you're just there to learn about them. And you want to make them feel understood, and that you're interested in what they have to say, not that after everything they say, you go, oh yeah, me too, you know, in an effort to try to connect. I mean, a little bit of that is okay, but you're not there to necessarily make friends. You're there to be their agent. So ask questions. Number 2, empathize. All right. So you are trying to emotionally connect. So it could be around, again, maybe a loved one passed away. Maybe somebody's going through a divorce, or maybe it's they're, you know, they just had a baby or whatever it is, but you're trying to empathize with their situation and help them know that you care. Number 3, identify the real issue. So, what I find with buyers is they generally have, they're going to have some sort of fear. Like it could be the high interest rates, meaning, you know, am I going to be able to afford this payment? Could be a fear around, there's not very much inventory, so I'm going to have to buy something I don't really like. They've got some issue, and they don't always tell you what the real issue is up front. So you're going to have to be a good counselor or a good detective and ask the right kind of questions to uncover what's going on under the surface. And then offer a solution. So, you know, could be having a conversation with this potential buyer, and I finally find out what the real concern is around higher interest rates, and, you know, whether or not they're going to be able to, you know, afford a payment. And then I can say, well, hey, have you heard of rate buy downs? And here's a little bit how they work. You know, some of them are temporary, some of them are permanent, some, you know, and sometimes we can get the seller to pay for those. Sometimes you might have to pay for it yourself, or some of both. But I'm offering a solution, and they go, oh, wow, I didn't know that you could do that, or whatever it is. You know, or maybe it's the typical seller buyer who wants to go buy, but they know that they could sell their house, but they're afraid that they might not find what they want to buy. So the real issue is transitional housing. How are we going to solve that problem of where are they going to, you know, they think they've got to go from house A to house B. Well, maybe you get an apartment. Could you live in an RV and park it at your relative's house? Could you, you know, you just talk all their different options through, transitional housing and solve the problem. All right. And then finally, urge an agreement. So, let's move forward on this understanding. And they go, okay. All right, buyer objections to the appointment. A lot of times you have buyers who want to look on their own. These buyers are very frustrating because they kind of want to sit out there and just look at your searches and not necessarily respond to your phone calls. And in the meantime, that they're wasting a lot of time and they're costing themselves a lot of money by waiting, all because they have a fear that you're going to be this hardcore salesman and twist their arm into buying a house, and they don't want to be pressured into buying a house. They'll let you know when they found a house. Well, the main thing is to not waste a lot of time on them. I'll call them every once in a great while. I'll be on looking for properties for other people, and I'll see one that looks like it fits their deal, and I'll send it to them. So, I'm letting them know that I'm still thinking about them and I'm still out there. At the same time, I'm not allowing them to take up a whole bunch of my time, energy, or brain space. So you just got to manage that. And some of them you can convert and get them to come around and jump into an actual process to help them move forward. Other ones just sit out there and either fade away, or they eventually find a property, and hopefully you're, able to put a deal together for them. They're just not willing to move through a regular buyer consultation, through a regular buying process, which can be frustrating. Yeah, I'm going to skip over that one. Okay, so getting into a buyer's consultation. Well, so let's back up a little bit. So we're trying to get people in the funnel. Let's talk about lead generation. Where are we going to find these buyers? Where do we find buyers?
The world is our oyster. We start with having conversations with our network.
Okay, yep. Conversation with your network. So either somebody in your sphere, or they know somebody and they give you a sphere referral. Where else are we going to find buyers?
Open houses.
Open houses. Perfect. Yep. You put up a house and boom, the buyers come. And so you get a chance to get them to come to you. So it's a great place to meet buyers. Where else? What about
Like seminars, probably,
say what?
like home buying seminars or.
Okay, yeah.
Perhaps.
Yep, that's a good place to meet buyers, home buyer seminars. This is going back to a little bit kind of like your sphere, but maybe a little bit different. Business referrals, or what we call our allied resources. So lenders, title and escrow people, any other business, contractors, people that in a business relationship, that end up knowing people that are looking to buy or sell. A little bit different category than just calling the average person that you know. So these are maybe you end up having some sort of referral partnership there, formal or informal, with some of your allied resources or different business referrals. So that's a good place to meet people and find other business owners who are willing to send you business. Obviously there's internet leads. A lot of those are not very high quality, and I think people tend to waste a lot of time and money on them. They're not near as good as just good old word of mouth from your sphere or sphere referral. So I would caution you against doing that. It's usually kind of the easy way out, or people think it is. They think, oh, I'll just spend some money and get some leads. Again, there's no shortcuts for getting good leads. So making your calls to your sphere every day, every week, every month, every quarter, and just growing that sphere, meeting new people is really going to be your best way to find business. I don't know if you've heard this statistic or not, or if you remember it. I don't know if any of you read the MREA yet. Gary Keller talks about, out of every 100 people that you have in your database, that 6.4% of them will be doing real estate in any given year. I like to be a little bit more conservative and round that number down to 5%. It's also easier to do the math in your head, right? So if I have 100 people in my database, I can count on doing 5 pieces of business out of my sphere, right? So 10 if I have 200, and so on and so forth. So based on whatever my financial goals are for however much money I want to make, and then I look at, well, what's my average commission check, and then that equals however many deals I need to do in a given year, which then equals how many people do I need to have in my database. So if you want to do 20 deals, but you only have 300 people in your database, then that math doesn't add up, right? So out of your database, you would get 15, and 5 of them got to come from somewhere else. So that just means that, you know, whether it's open houses, whatever other source that, you know, that you're going to use to try and prospect for those other 5 deals, because they're not going to come out of your database, because we know the math. I've just found it really helpful whenever I'm setting my goals. Is one of the most important things I can do is continue to meet new people and add them to my database. So like I'm on track this year to do somewhere over 30 to 36 transactions by the end of this year. And I have a goal of doing 50 next year. And I've looked at however many people I have in my database, and I realized, okay, I need to add like 180 more people to the database if I'm going to hit 50 next year. So that's like, I don't know if any of you have read One Thing, the book One Thing. If you haven't, you need to buy it and read it. It's an excellent book. It's all about time management and how to time block and kind of reverse engineer everything. Get back to what's your very first domino of what you need to do in order for you to reach your bigger goals. So for me, my one thing is getting 180 names in my database by the end of this year, so that I can hit my goals for next year. Because I know if I do that, boom, I mean, my 50 is almost guaranteed. If you've got the names in your database and you call them and email them and use the MREA model to put them on a touch plan, then the business is going to be there. It's going to come in. But if you don't have people in the database, then you don't have pie in the sky numbers because they got to come from somewhere. All right. So I hope that is helpful. All right. So we talk to people, we add people to the database. We're talking to them on a regular basis. We get a lead, we follow up with the lead, we set the appointment, and now we're preparing for our buyer consultation. Right, so we are confirming the appointment day and time. So again, to have, let's just say I talked to somebody last week, and really you want to book the appointment for as quick as possible, right? You don't want to say, well, let me book you out 1 or 2 weeks, right? Because in the meantime, they forget, they talk to somebody else. It's just way too much time to put out there for something to happen. Okay. So, today's Monday. I would be booking appointments for this week, not for next week, unless somebody just absolutely goes, we're on vacation the rest of this week, and we get back, this weekend. And so what I would probably do is set a time to actually, I'd pencil them, and I'd say, so can we meet Monday at 4? And I'll call you Monday morning to confirm. Right? So see what I'm doing? I'm setting expectations. I'm showing that I'm a leader. I'm showing that I have a plan, and that there's some accountability there. It's not I'm going to set this on my calendar and just kind of hope that you show up after they've just gotten back from a vacation. Well, they're probably going to forget. So if it's a case like that, yeah, I'll book it out if I have to. But I'm always then confirming that appointment either the morning of or the day before. Hey, just wanted to reach out to you, and we've got an appointment tomorrow at 4 o'clock at my office, blah, blah, blah. Right, confirm the appointment location, date and time. Ensure all the decision makers attend. Okay, so you need the husband and wife, not just one or the other. Or whoever it is that's going to be the decision makers, they need to all be there. Sometimes you'll have one or other of the couple say, well, the other person's busy, or they're not really involved, I'm the decision maker, blah, blah, blah. Don't give in to that. You're gonna just waste your time. Ultimately, they're going to be buying the house together. And if they're going to be buying the house together, they need to hear all the information together. Otherwise, it's just going to be telephone, right? They're going to have to relay the information from you to their spouse, and they're not going to get it right. They're going to leave a bunch of stuff out. So you're going to end up having to do it twice. And it just doesn't make any sense. So you just go, okay, well, that's great. But what I'm really looking for is a time where both of you could be there, even if that, takes a little bit more time. So really hold to that. Make sure that all the decision makers attend. Complete your buyer guide. Have all your buyer materials prepared and printed. So particularly your paperwork. Okay, so I'm not a fancy guide. I'll just tell you right up front, I don't have a buyer's guide. I don't have a seller's guide. I think it's a lot of kind of a waste of ink and paper and time. Yeah, it could kind of set it, I guess, an impression that you're prepared and that you're professional or what have you. But I see too many agents spending more time on this than on either lead generation or working with people. So I tend to just kind of cut out the fluff and boil things down to the lowest common denominator. And I really haven't seen, at least any of my clients, that, none of my clients would left my consultation going, but I didn't get a buyer's guide, or I'm not going to do business with you because I didn't get a buyer's guide. No, they don't even know what a buyer's guide is, right? They don't even know to ask for one. So just have your paperwork ready. Okay. So make sure you are using a buyer broker agreement. Super important. It shows what you're worth. So if you're afraid to present one and say, this is the, percent amount that I work for, then you might want to do a little bit of reflection, self-reflection on why is that? What's my fear around, do I really believe in myself? What's my worth? What's my time worth? Because you're asking someone to go into business with you. You're asking someone to follow you through a process. So I shouldn't really make any excuses for that, or you need to prove myself to somebody. I'm here to do business, and this is the way I do business. And so I've rarely found people that were resistant to signing a buyer broker agreement. If you're going after the people that kind of like fit who you are, your values, and your your beliefs and values, then they're going to be willing to sign one of these. And if they aren't, then it's okay. There's other buyers. I do a little bit I take a little bit of time to try and help them explain why it's actually in their best interest to sign one of these. So here's a little script, if you will, for a buyer objection to signing a BBA. All right, so here's the typical objection. The objection is, I've got several realtors who are working for me. So what they think is that they've talked to 3, 4, 5, 6 realtors, and those realtors know what they're looking for and have them on a search and are somehow going to find them that property. And they just want to leave their options open so that whichever one of these realtors finds something, then that's the one they're going to go with, right? That's their mindset. And they somehow think that different realtors have access to different homes. They don't understand that we're all in the same MLS. Like we can all see the same homes. There's no realtor that has some secret, subdivision somewhere where they've got homes that nobody else knows about. So the way you handle that is, they'll say something about, wanting to, they've got several realtors working for them. And I say, well, can I be honest with you? And they'll of course say yes, right? Who's going to say no? Don't be honest with me. Can I be honest with you? The reality is, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is that you don't have any realtors working for you. Can I tell you why? Because they're a little bit shocked, right? I've just told them something. I've just said, you don't have anybody working for you. Can I tell you why? Sure. Well, as an independent contractor, if somebody's not willing to sign a buyer broker agreement with me, then they haven't hired me. So how much time and energy do you think that I'm going to spend working for someone who I don't know if I'm going to get a paycheck? Oh, I see. Yeah, probably not going to work very hard. Yeah. So those ones that you think are working for you, they're working with the buyers who are actually agreed to work with them, and you're on the back burner. You're kind of an afterthought. So if you really want to buy a house, you don't have to buy one with me, but I'm just telling you, it's in your best interest to sign a buyer broker agreement and actually hire a realtor to work for you. And then do a tie down. Doesn't that make sense? Yes. Is there any reason why you wouldn't want to work with me? Well, no. Okay. well, then hire me today and let's get started. Whatever it is. So you just have to kind of understand their mentality, because everybody's making decisions of what they think is in their best interest, even if it's not, right? And they just don't have all of the information. So you just have to find a way to get the information across in a non-threatening way, non-argumentative way. So I just get permission and then share with them, I'm just being honest and real and transparent. And then it comes across and they go, oh, wow, this guy's like really telling me the truth. And then I end up gaining their trust, right? And then most of them want to sign with me anyways. So I have something like a 95% signing rate on buyers once they're in my office. And a lot of it has to do with the conversation or conversations that I've had with them leading up to the consultation. Like, what you realize about most people is they've already decided. Like, if they're willing to come to a consultation, don't you think they've already decided that they're going to work with you? Otherwise, why would they waste their time? So most of them have already basically decided that they're going to work with you. So really all you got to do is don't shoot yourself in the foot. Don't screw it up. Don't get in your own way, right? Just be confident, go through your information, ask them to sign, and just be the professional and assume that they want to work with you. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there across the table from you. All right. Prepare the meeting space. I mean, it's usually not a whole lot you need to do. Some people, again, get all fancy and bring in like snacks and I don't know, whatever kind of drinks or whatever. I'll bring in water bottles so they have, something to drink. Because my meeting's going to last like an hour to an hour and a half. So they are probably going to want to drink something. So make sure they have water or coffee or whatever. Okay, review the lead sheet. All right, now I don't know kind of where you guys are at necessarily in your process, but I don't call it a lead sheet, but I've got a little information sheet that on each of my buyers leading up to them coming into a consultation. And I kind of improvised, and I got this from the team that I used to be on, because it's kind of like this. Think of yourself, here at first, you're going to be the doctor and the nurse and the receptionist at the front desk, right? But at some point, if you move forward in your business, you're going to have other people on your team, so to speak, in your business. And what you really want to have happen is for them to see you as the doctor, to see you as the accountant or the the CPA, the financial advisor. You're the expert. So you'd have your front desk person or whoever it is possibly call up the buyer and say, hey, can I get a little bit of information from you to better prepare Martine, Jess, Grace, and Liza, or I don't know if it's Liza or Liza. Anyway, to better prepare them for your consultation. So I've got a list of questions like, are you relocating? Are you using another realtor? Do you own a house or are you renting? If so, when's your lease up? Write down, are you pre-approved? Do you need a lender recommendation? Who is your lender? What kind, what money do you have for a down payment and closing costs? When do you want to move? How long you've been looking for a house? And then what kind of house are you looking for? You know, what are the locations that you're thinking about moving to? So just a whole list of kind of diagnostic questions. You can get, you know, some or all of those actually answered before the consultation and end up shortening your consultation. Or you can, you know, you can still have that sheet and go through some of those questions right then and there at the consultation. The concern would be, you know, is that person, you at least want to know that they're pre-approved. Because if they're not pre-approved and they don't really even know how much they can shop for, then you might be wasting your time. You might not even have a real buyer. So it's better to get a bunch of these questions answered up front to know what kind of buyer you're actually meeting with. So then you have the sheet in front of you, kind of like what the nurse, you know, gets all your vital signs and hands that information to the doctor, so that when you're actually meeting with the doctor, he's going through all those and kind of asking you some questions, but he already has some information in his hands. So he's better prepared to know how to help you. So it's the same thing with you, except you're going to do both jobs for right now. Is when you're talking with them at first, you're still going to ask as many of these questions as possible. Even if you don't have the sheet, just, you know, ask as many as possible so you get to know their situation, and then you can finish it at the consultation, and then be able to diagnose their situation. Okay, home wish list. So these are kind of some of those questions. You know, who's in your family? Like, you know, how many people would be living in this home? What are your non-negotiables? What are the items that are super important to you about a home? Well, we have to have 4 bedrooms and we have to have at least 2 baths, you know, and here's why, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, what are your top 5 non-negotiables? What would they be? You know, we really want a fireplace, or we really want, you know, I don't know, whatever it is. So here's just, you know, some sample questions about asking them about what's important to them about the home that they're looking for. Now, all right, here's another freebie I'm going to throw in. So when I'm talking with buyers and I'm talking to them about the house that they want to buy, I'll typically say something like this. So if we get out there and we're looking at a home, so you know that the housing market is kind of tough right now, right? You know, there's a tie down. Yeah. Inventory's fairly low. And so if we get out there and we find a house that has 4 out of the 5 things that you're looking for in a home, I would suggest that you consider putting in an offer. So again, you're setting expectations. You're helping them see, oh, this is the market that I'm in. I shouldn't hold out for the quote unquote perfect home, because then I'll never find it. So you're just, in a nice way, speaking truth to them that then resonates with what they see out there in reality, and they realize, oh yeah, Tim's telling me the truth. Yeah, it's a tough market out there. I have friends who've talked about how long it's taken them to find a house and blah blah blah. So Tim's just saying, hey, let's bring the expectations down just a hair and say, if we find 4 out of 5, maybe there's some solution. We can remodel, we can do this or that and change the home and get you that 5th thing. But if there's 4 out of 5 things in that house that are really important to you, then we probably should be putting in an offer. Does that make sense? Yes, there's the tie down. So that's one of the scripts that I throw in there. So that helps you, again, manage expectations. The second script that I throw in there is where I give them the three, I don't know, call them the three conditions, I guess. So if we're out there, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if we get out there and we're looking for a house, and let's say we look at 3 homes that you've chosen that, you know, that you feel like match your criteria. So here's what I'll tell them. Number one, I will tell them that most of my clients, the majority of my clients, would it surprise you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller or buyer, would it surprise you to know that the majority of my clients put an offer on the first time out looking at homes? And they would go, yeah, that surprises me. Well, can I tell you why that's true? And they say, yeah. So then I go through my process. All right, so this is all free stuff. All right, so you're gonna have to jot it down. I'll try to go slow. It's not in your booklet. It's all stuff that either I stole from somebody else, or I made up myself, or a combination of the two. So the way I learned to sell homes, it was really effective. I can't tell you how many times I went out with home buyers and we bought a house on the first time out. We looked at one house and it was like one and done, boom. Or we went out for an afternoon and we looked at 5 or 6 homes. They were still picking out a house. We were still writing an offer and we were getting that sucker under contract. And boom, I'm on to the next buyer. And that would happen about 75% of the time. And it really wasn't anything magic. I'm not some crazy magical salesman that just had, you know, casts a spell on somebody and they buy a house with me. Is really kind of just some tried and true methods that that work. So here's kind of how the script goes. In the consultation, you're gonna again set the expectation. I would share with them, most of my people buy a house on the first time out. If we find a house with 4 or 5 of the items that are your non-negotiables, so we need to be writing an offer. These are all things that you say in the consultation. Again, you're setting expectations for when you're going to get out in the field. So the reason why most of my folks write an offer on the first time out is I use a very simple home buying process I call the ophthalmologist method. Okay, so ophthalmologist being the eye doctor. People can relate to the eye doctor. Most people have been to an eye doctor. And what happens when you go to the eye doctor? 1 or 2, right? 1 or 2. And they keep changing the lenses until everything's clear, right? So when we get Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, when we get out to look at house number 1, we'll circle up in the living room afterwards and I'll ask you, what did you like about the home? And you tell me whatever it is that you like about the home. And then we'll go on to house number 2. And I'm going to ask you what you liked about the home. And then I'm going to ask you if you had to choose between house number 1 and house number 2, and those were the only 2 houses in the world that you could buy, which one would you choose? So they think for a moment, So when I'm explaining it to them, I just explain that house number 1 or house number 2. And I said, so Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you see that the reason for that is that then you begin to process all the different criteria that is important to you about location and price and condition and features and school districts and all those different things. And then you're going to say, yeah, we like house number 1. Well, now we don't have to remember house number 2. Because if we're going to go out and see 5 homes, when you get done with 5 homes, you're going to go, no, wait a second, which house was it that had that bathroom in this back hallway, or whatever it is, you're going to forget. And what we know is that a confused mind can't make a decision. So I'm not going to tell you, I'm not there to make you buy a house. You're going to self-discover it for yourself by walking through this process. I'm just going to walk alongside you, maybe ask a few questions, but it's by the time we get to house number 5 and you're choosing between these 2 homes, it's going to be very obvious to you which is the best house in the best location with the amount of money that you have to work with out of all the homes that we looked at. And I'm going to remind them that we looked at, 20 homes on the TV screen in my office. We did a search. We looked at 20 homes. You narrowed it down to 5 homes that you wanted to go see. And now out of these 5, house number 4 is the best option. So you've looked at all the inventory in your price range and in your location, and this is the best option for your family. And then you're going to hear me say, is there any reason we can't do some paperwork? So again, I've already set I've said this is how I work. It's very simple. It's no pressure. Here's what I'm going to say, blah, blah, blah. So we go out there and I just start working the process, and they start playing the game, and they see that, oh, he's really doing what he said he was going to do. Again, building trust. And then when I get to the end and I say, is there any reason why we can't do any paperwork? I've already gained their trust because I did exactly what I told them that I was going to do. Now, here's the caveat. The next little script is, now, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I realize that sometimes pictures lie. And we'll get out there and look at all of those homes, and you may not end up liking any of them. And that's okay. However, what we don't want to do is go back out a second or a third or a fourth time and keep banging our head against the same wall. Because that's kind of the definition of insanity. So what we want to do is, there's only 3 things that we can change. So here's the script. There's only 3 things that we can change, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. We can change the price point, we can change the location, or we can change our expectations around the kind of house that we're looking for. Those are the only 3 things we can change. So if we don't find what we're looking for, that's fine. More than glad to go out a second time. But I'm going to ask you which one of those 3 search criteria you're going to want to change. Because it's like hunting. If we're not finding the game in one area, then we're not going to go back out at the same place at the same time and keep trying to find the game when the game isn't there. They're somewhere else. So we want to change something. We're either going to change the location, change the price point, change the expectations around the home. But we have to change something. Otherwise, we're going to keep looking in the same place and keep seeing the same kinds of homes that you're not going to like. And then it just ends up wasting your time and not being productive. So as long as they understand that, then I can work with that, right? I'm not opposed to going out a second or a third time. What I'm doing, though, is setting up the parameters of, I'm not going to follow you around and look for the imaginary perfect home that doesn't exist. I'm not going to do it. So, and so in a nice way, I've just set the parameters on that, and they recognize that I am the expert. I know what I'm talking about. And even if they've fallen into the perfect home trap, I've told them about the trap. I'll tell them about there is no perfect home, is there? No, there's no perfect home. And I'll say that at some point, and I'll have a tie down and make sure that they admit that there's no perfect home. Because that's what happens. The buyer's looking, they've got their mind made up. They think they know what kind of house that they want. But you know what? If it's not on the market and we're not finding it, then it's not a real house. It doesn't exist. And if you keep trying to find it, if you fall into their trap of division, their version of reality of what the kind of house that they're trying to find, you'll just open door after door after door and you'll never sell a home. And then it'll end up being your fault that you didn't find them a home. So you just don't want to fall into that trap. You got to make them see that you're the leader and that you know how this works and that you've done this, you know the potential pitfalls that buyers fall into, and you're trying to help them not fall into those pitfalls. And one of them is chasing the non-existent perfect home that will waste a whole bunch of everybody's time. Okay. The consultation itself. All right, so the people come in, and here's my script. I have 3 goals for our meeting this afternoon. First, I want to get to know you and your real estate needs and goals. That's number 1. Number 2, I'm going to share with you what's going on in the local real estate market in, whatever city it is that they're wanting to buy in, and show you my home buying process for how I help people get homes in this difficult market. So point number 2 is has 2 subpoints. It's the market and about my process for home buying. I'm going to explain what they could expect from me. Now, you can do your business however you want to, but for me, I have a large family and I want to have a life. And so thankfully, my mentor in real estate showed me how to have boundaries and not just be available 24/7. So if that would be important to you, I will share this with you, and you can take it for whatever it's worth. So when I'm in the consultation and I'm setting expectations for my accessibility and when I'm not going to work for them, it goes something like this. Normally, you'll be able to reach me during normal office hours, normal work hours. And if you call my office, or if they're a client of mine, they'll have my cell phone. If they're not a client, I don't give out my cell phone, but I'll give that out to my clients. Then you can call, and if I don't answer, I'll call you back as soon as possible. If it's after regular hours, yes, I do check my phone for emails or texts or calls. So I may or may not, depending on what I'm doing with my family, I may respond, or if not, you'll hear from me the next day. Because really what I found, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is there really aren't any emergencies in real estate. And they kind of chuckle at that. And then again, the other way that you do that is just by you maintaining your own calendar. When am I available to actually meet with clients? What's acceptable to me? I'm not meeting with someone past 5:30. I'm just not. I mean, to start it. So most of the time I'm trying to meet with them later in the afternoon after they get off work, because I know my consultation is going to go about an hour and a half. And I have a life and I want to get home for dinner with my family. So I can't tell you the last time that I actually had an appointment where I missed a meal with my family. I just don't do it. It's not acceptable. It's just not going to happen. Now, do I occasionally meet with people on Saturdays, based on maybe they're an out of town out-of-state client that's flying in and I need to do a home tour over a weekend, sure. But that's the exception, not the rule. So most people, even if they say they have a difficult schedule, you push them a little bit and you have your boundaries, they'll adjust to your boundaries. And you just got to keep it in your mind that you're important and that the home buying process is really important. I mean, they find time to get off work to go to the dentist and the doctor. They don't go to the dentist and the doctor in the evening and weekends. Are you any less important in this huge purchase of a house? I don't think so. I think it's pretty important. So I try to keep them during, as much as I can, during regular business hours. And then, like I said, every once in a while, I may make an exception for somebody that's got a unique situation. But again, 9 times out of 10, I keep the appointments during regular business hours. And that just maintains my sanity. So I have a life and I'm not feeling used or resentful or anything like that. Again, sometimes I'll do a home tour and actually show homes, like on a Saturday. But again, most times I'm not going out in the evenings. Generally not going out on Sundays. The only thing I'll usually ever do on a Sunday is an open house every once in a while. So I really don't work much more than 40 hours a week, and it's usually regular business hours. So it's all around your priorities and your boundaries and what's important to you, but you can have a very successful business and not have to be run ragged. All right, so you booked the buyer's consultation. They've come in. I mean, here's just a whole bunch more questions of just different questions you might ask during that first section. So remember I said there were 3 things. Number 1 was you're going to do a buyer needs analysis, right? You're going to take your diagnostic sheet, whatever you're going to use with all your questions on it, and then jot down notes, right? They're going to tell you, well, we really like to cook. We need a big kitchen. We just can't do a galley kitchen. It's got to be a big kitchen with a big island, and we need to, food's really important to us, and we entertain a lot. And so, I mean, those are specific things that you want to make sure that you're jotting down. Or, if somebody says we need a big yard, well, what's a big yard? I mean, that big is different to different people. So drill down on that. What's the big yard for? Is it the kids, the dogs? I don't know, a garden? Well, what's the big yard for? Does it need to be fenced? Does it need to have, if it's gardening, does it need to have sunlight and you don't want a whole bunch of trees in there so you got too much shade? So, I mean, it's just questions like that that show that you're thinking about their situation and curious and, asking questions. All right, so you've done the needs analysis. You've tried to diagnose their situation as best as possible. And you move into the second piece and you go, so here's what's going on in the market. I bring up my TMO, show what homes are going for in the areas that they're looking for, whatever other market factors that are important, share a little bit about the market. Then go into setting expectations. So here's my process. Here's how I work. Here's what you can expect from me, blah, 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 blah. And then thirdly, in our meeting today, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, so we're going to go over your needs and goals. I'm going to go over the home buying process and what's going on in the local real estate market. And then thirdly, if you feel comfortable working with me, we're going to do a little bit of paperwork and then we can look at some homes. How does that sound? Sounds great. So then boom, I just move through my 3 sections of my buyer consultation. So go through the needs analysis, make sure I ask lots of questions, make sure they feel understood. Then I go into my section, explain everything, and then we get to the end and I say, okay, so Are you ready to do some paperwork? And they say yes. So I get out the OREA pamphlet and go through the three kinds of three kinds of agency: seller agency, buyer agency, disclosed limited agency. Have them sign off on that. That flows right into your D-Lab. Go through your D-Lab of getting their permission. What if I'm representing another buyer who's interested in the same house as you? Is that okay? Or what if, you're interested in a listing that's, my team leader's listing, right? So it's the same company. Then we need to have permission to be able to represent both sides of the same transaction. So you get them to say yes to the D-Lab. And then thirdly, then I go over the buyer broker agreement, fill out the buyer broker agreement, get them to sign the buyer broker agreement. And then once we sign the paperwork, then it's like, okay, let's do a property search. So we pull up the MLS, we do a property search. I put in their criteria, brings up however many homes. And then I basically say, so what we're going to do is we're going to look through each of these homes. We don't necessarily have to look at all the pictures of every home. Like if it's not the right location or it's ugly on the outside or whatever, just tell me next and we'll go to the next house. So I'm trying to help them see this doesn't have to be laborious. We'll move through this as quickly as possible. And if you are curious, then we can stop and we can look at pictures of whatever house it is. So I tell them that we're going to build a maybe list. Okay, so these are all maybes. You're either going to tell me it's a maybe or a no. So we're going to look through all 20 homes. Oh, yeah, that's a maybe, maybe, definite maybe, maybe, no, 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 no. So whatever it is, so I check the ones that they say maybe to. We boil it down. So then I bring up the list of just the checked homes. Now, if it's, yeah, go ahead.
Is this in the list? Is this when you're doing the RMLS search and there's like a detailed view? Is that where you're at? And then checking the ones that they like?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. I just correct the ones. I check the ones that they like. Now, I haven't had this problem in a while because usually there's not that much property to look at. And they're usually boiling it down to 1, 2, or 3 homes that we're going to go see. But it used to be we were looking at like 30 homes and then they would boil it down to like 10, and like, oh, good grief, I don't want to go out and have to show them 10 homes. So what I would do is like, okay, let's look through this maybe list a second time. And what I found is that when we looked at it a second time, it had those homes kind of next to each other. Then they started seeing, oh yeah, I'm really serious about this one. Oh, that one, not so much. We probably don't need to go see that house. And we'd be able to X off a few more. I mean, I never gave them a number that it had to be 5, but I might throw that out and say, we're going to look at these 30 homes and you're probably, again, I'm throwing out expectations. You're probably going to narrow it down to somewhere around 5 or 6 homes. Right. So then if we're at 9 or 10, and we go back through and I say, so what I found is that on a second look through, sometimes people realize that maybe they weren't as serious about a home as they were the first time around. So we X off 2, 3, 4 more and boil it down to the ones that are really, really serious about. And then I go ahead and book the home tour. Here it is, whatever day of the week, and homes are moving fast. We don't go out and see them tomorrow. Some of them could already be gone, right? So usually we're booking it for the very next day. We're booking it for the very next day, or at the latest, 2 or 3 days later, which usually doesn't work real great. But we'll just book it as quick as we can get out there, and go look at those homes, and then I follow my ophthalmologist method, and boom, we're usually writing an offer. So that's how I do it. And like I said, in 2020, I was on a team. I was a lead buyer's agent. I closed 33 homes, and I sent 11 listing referrals to my team leader that also closed that year. So had a really big year. It was awesome. It was exciting. Branched out, started my own team. Again, this year has gone actually really well for me. I'm already at 23 closed and pending. Just myself. And anyway, and that's largely due to those systems and models that I've used, because it helps keep your buyers on track and keeps them accountable to moving them forward, instead of having them be all squirrely on you and taking up a bunch of your time. So if you'll follow that, it's kind of like, I don't know if any of you are parents out there, but you know how it is with little kids. It's like you've got to give them really, really specific, detailed instructions, or they go haywire and they misinterpret what you've told them that you wanted them to do. So I just found that the more specific I was in the consultation with the buyer, the faster things went out in the field, and the quicker we got them a home. If I forgot to say stuff in the consultation, I wasn't as specific, or whatever, then I ended up having to fill in that information as we were looking at homes, because they weren't as focused in their expectations than if I did a better job in the consultation. So consultation is super important. You really want to get that down and nail it, because if you do, it can save you a lot of time. And it just helps set up the buyers for success. So they know that there's a process, there's a plan. You're not just a door opener that's out there to just, oh, let's just go look at homes because we love to look at homes, kind of a thing. So they'll respect you more, and they'll learn to follow you when you have a plan and you actually follow the plan. Questions? Okay. We are basically done. Let's just talk about some ahas in our last few minutes together. Everybody share with me at least one aha.
I think it's the importance of doing the buyer broker agreement. Because then there's maybe more of a commitment from them.
Yeah.
And I feel less like I am most likely wasting my time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And most of it really is psychological. But it does make a difference. Yeah. What were you going to say, Jess?
And I like the way that you gave us the script of explaining, like, look, we are all independent contractors. So you may have an idea that someone is working for you, but, truth be told, not many independent contractors work for free. So
right.
and to kind of like put it in perspective in that capacity, because I like to believe in like the good of humans, right? And so I bet that most people just don't understand the process and like understand, that we're good, hardworking people that are just trying to, pay our taxes like everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it's weird. People get in this weird mental space when they think of realtors. And so I just help them see I'm a contractor, just like you'd hire a plumber or an electrician. Mm-hmm. You have a job to get done. Do you want to hire me or not hire me? If you want to hire me, then we're going to sign an agreement. I mean, just like you would sign you sign paperwork with a plumber or an electrician saying they're going to
Oh,
do
yeah.
this for a certain price. Why wouldn't you do that with a realtor? You know?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so you just kind of
Yeah.
you kind of bring it out of their weird mental space and bring it kind of into reality and kind of show them how it works. And then all of a sudden it kind of makes sense to them. Oh yeah, duh. I mean, I do this all the time. It's not some weird thing. But for some reason, there's a certain percentage of them that think that they have this friend who's a realtor, or they have, 4 or 5 or 6 of them, and they're all working for me to find me a house, but I haven't really hired them. So, I just help them see that, no, I'm sorry, but they're probably not really working for you. They're because they don't know if they're
More
going
of
to
an advisor.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That was cool. I appreciate kind of the scripts that you're giving us. I'm very new to the process. My fingerprints haven't even passed yet, so this is like the first time that I've been exposed to animation. So sorry I couldn't participate a little bit more.
That's all right.
Thank you so much for your words.
Yeah. So just know I did not come from a sales background. I actually came from a church ministry background. So I'd never been in business. I had never done sales. A lot of this stuff just absolutely freaked me out, having to make all these calls and stuff that first year. But once I got past my fear and like made myself do it and started, kind of experiencing some success, and pretty much I was just in a situation where it was a do or die, right? Failure was not an option kind of scenario. And so I just sucked it up, made myself do it. And just, I knew that I didn't know anything. So I was just going to follow what my team leader said. I was going to do what she said. And I did. And, the rest is history. I've done very well over the past few years. And, is really largely because of her. So anyway, if I can do it, all you guys can do it. So any other ahas?
I think my biggest aha was when you mentioned never to say or never to ask the whys, especially with regards to whys. Why are they planning to move, or what's the reason? And that was a big aha moment for me, because a lot of people kind of start with the whys of things, particularly like sellers, like, why are you trying to sell your house?
Yeah.
So it's always that why question, the big whys, like I always say. So it's something that when you phrase your question, or like what's got you thinking into moving, so that kind of made me think, oh, okay, so never, you can rephrase the question and still got the motivation or the reason why they're, and so that's the big aha
very
moment.
good. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, that's great.
All right.
I also really liked the optometrist thing, like because it can be so overwhelming, even when I'm searching for properties and I'm like, what one was that one that was kind of almost perfect?
Yeah.
So just having that, like, okay, this one or this one. Okay, now this one or this one.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I realized that my husband and I did that when we searched for our house, that it was always, we gave it a nickname, and the dollhouse always won out, and then we bought it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how that works. Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, awesome. You guys have been a great class. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to. Timothy.english@kw.com is my email. So if
can you drop that in the chat box,
sure,
your information? That's okay.
Yep. I'll put my info in the chat box. Okay, there you go. So there's a phone number, email, and so yeah, be glad to help any of you. If you have any follow-up questions as you guys are trying to get started, be glad to help.
All right. Thank you so much.
You bet. You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate
All right. Take care, everybody.
it. Bye.
Thank you.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye bye.